This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Coveil. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. My guest today is Joseph Pine. He is the author, along with his co-author, James Gilmore, of The Experience Economy. You might have seen this in the last 20 years. I first picked up this book in 1999, and the thinking that they put into their work has stayed with me the whole time. Look, time is limited. Attention is scarce. People are like goldfish basically now. The issue for all of us, are we engaging people? Are we real? Are we authentic? Are we just giving a commodity? Just giving a service? Or are we giving an experience, a transformation? That's what people want to pay for. People aspire to something transformative. That's all people want these days. They don't care if you can give them a commodity or a service. Everyone can do that. Anyone can do that. No. What it comes down to is the experience leading to the transformation. That's what people want. They want to get to the flow state. And the businesses, the entrepreneurs that can help them get there first, fastest, they're the ones that are going to make bloody fortunes. Without any further delay, let's jump right into my guest today, Joseph Pine, and talk about the experience economy. Going back in time, back to the .com era, I was buying every book under the sun. Honestly, though, there's probably only one or two, and only one, and not just because I'm talking to you, but only one that I can recall from that time period that stuck with me as kind of a really revolutionary type idea. And this was your book, The Experience Economy. And this was, I guess, your first article. I'm going to let you go down this path, but your article about it came out in 98. Was the book 99 originally, or?
Correct.
I'm one of the people that have got the original edition. It's stuck with me for all these years as an entrepreneur, as a business person. And it's not necessarily, as we're going to unpack today, it's not necessarily easy to do, but I think you've made the case for a long time. It's imperative that we do. Why don't you start from the beginning? What was the genesis? What was the nexus for my whole lead in on all this kind of stuff? Where did you start this first notion of those words, the experience economy?
I appreciate you having me on first, Michael, and I appreciate what you said about the book, that it's the one that has stuck with you over the past 20 years. That is quite high praise indeed, and I appreciate it. The genesis of it was actually in my first book, which was called Mass Customization. I actually wrote that when I was at IBM. It started as my thesis at MIT. Mass customization is basically efficiently serving customers uniquely, giving everybody exactly what they want, but doing it at a price they're willing to pay. I often said when I did speeches and workshops on mass customization that mass customizing a good, physical good, automatically turns it into a service. People would ask, well, how's that? Well, if you look at the classic economic distinctions, goods are standardized, services are customized. They're done just for a particular person. Goods are inventoried after production, but services are delivered on demand when the customer says this is what they want. And goods are tangible and services intangible, but part and parcel of mass customization is the intangible service of helping customers figure out what it is they want. That came out in late 92, and it was a little over a year later that I was doing an executive education class on mass customization. There's a guy in the back of the room, sort of a smart aleck, but he raised his hand and he asked the question, well, you talked about service companies that mass customize. What does mass customization turn a service into? And I shot back that mass customization automatically turns a service into an experience. And I went, whoa, that sounds good. Hold on a second. I got to write that down. I did write it down and I did study it, and I figured out that was in fact true. If you design a service that's so appropriate for a person, exactly the service that they need at this moment in time, then you can't help but turn into a memorable event, into an experience. because you're making them go, wow. That meant that experiences were, in fact, a distinct economic offering, as distinct from services as services are from goods. That meant we'd have an economy that would be based off of experiences after the agrarian economy on commodities, the industrial economy on goods, and the service economy, that the next thing we do is we'd enter into an experience economy. That was the genesis of it. Again, it was late 93, early 94 when that happened. That led into the Harvard Business Review article. We actually did write a couple of articles on it before that, including in the Wall Street Journal. We wrote an opinion piece on it. Then the book coming out in 1999, which we updated in 2011. And now, just this past week, we re-released in hardcover with a new preview.
So that 1994 time period was a very interesting time period. For me, I guess I would say probably I was in grad school in London. There really wasn't internet access, but I got back to the States May, June 94, and all of a sudden, Steve Case was giving us all a disk to put on our computers. And then within a year, Andreessen goes with Netscape in the summer of 95, and the game was on.
Michael, for some of your younger listeners, when they hear the terms that you're saying, I didn't have any internet access in London, it meant that the Wi-Fi was poor, that you couldn't.
Oh, there's no Wi-Fi.
It didn't exist, right? It didn't exist.
It's a good point because, I mean, you and I, and look, anybody in the late 30s, 40s, 50s, I mean, you're going to have a really still distinct idea of when things shifted. I do, however, now have a hard time remembering what it was like without these devices, but I do remember specifically 94, 95 is when it all changed. Now, how much was that change? Because you've already laid out that the experience economy notion was starting to come together in 92, 93, 94. How much did the tech explosion shift or hyperdrive you're thinking?
Not that much until after the book came out, actually. Still in the late 90s, it was still the fact that not every company had their own URL, that they really got it in that. I was always a tech guy. I actually used the ARPANET, the precursor to the internet, because my dad worked on it in Palo Alto in the late 60s and 70s. So I was a tech guy, but there was just so much going on in the real world and thinking about what we saw that it was before you really had that explosion. I mean, the smartphone hadn't been invented yet. That really was probably the demarcation point where there was such a difference in what was going on with digital technology, with the internet. I mean, yeah, from laptops and desktops, people were surfing the web. And that was the main reason that they did get on the web at the time, that they did have access to these, is that they had new experiences that they couldn't access in real life. That has gone forward many orders of magnitude in terms of what we can do today versus then.
Let me pick a classic example, or rather new classic example versus something a little more distant. I mean, it's current, but it goes back in time, Disney. But let's bring something really current that I think people can wrap their arms around. I want to just talk about it for a moment and unpack it as if we were a couple scientists observing this phenomena. And the phenomena that I want to observe that maybe we all don't really observe too closely because we just utilize it is the Apple Store. I mean, the Apple Store still to this day has got this feeling. I mean, I was in a new one in Singapore recently, and it's like a buzz. It's just freaking tablets and computers and phones. People are in there, and you can feel the energy. It's like, what the heck is going on? What did Steve Jobs birth with this thing?
I was in the one in London. I'll be there early next month also, but the one I'm thinking of was in Paris earlier this year. That was that way too. It was just a buzz with things. People don't remember Steve Jobs actually announced the Apple stores in 2002. So I don't know if the first one is in 2002 or 3, but 16, 17 years old. It was before they invented the iPhone that they had the Apple stores. But he got lambasted in the business press that people said, you're a manufacturer. You can't go into retail. You're going to tick off your channel partners. They won't sell your product anymore. And you don't know anything about retail. You don't know how to talk to actual consumers. You're going to fail at this. And he proved them wrong because he didn't just design an Apple store, even though that's what it's named. He designed an Apple store experience, one where everything is live when you go in there. You get to try out products. You experience them before you buy them. I always say it's a basic principle of the experience economy that if you get your customers to experience your product before they buy it, the chances they will buy it go up. As a manufacturer, Apple became the number one retailer in the world in sales per square foot, obviously predicated on great product. A huge part of that buzz, a great majority of the buzz, is the products itself. But when you combine great products with a great experience, well, that's when magic can happen.
Now, if I contrast this with, I recall perhaps 3, 4, 5 years ago, spotting it for the first time, I walked by a Microsoft store. It's a graveyard. There's no buzz in there. There's like a bunch of just typical mall kids working their job. Whereas the typical mall kids working at Apple seem to have been given some kind of like dose of happy euphoria adrenaline or something. I mean, this whole experience thing is not just, it's got to be authentic. You got to believe it.
Exactly. The book my partner Jim Gilmore and I wrote after the experience economy was called Authenticity, What Consumers Really Want, because we recognize that in a world of paid for experiences, people increasingly question what is real and what is not. And increasingly, they want the real from the genuine, not the fake from some phony. We call authenticity basically the consumer sensibility of the experience economy, that people in the experience economy want their offerings, whether they're commodities, goods, services, and experiences, not just experiences, they want all offerings to be authentic to them. It's just sort of a natural evolution in what's going on. If you don't get that right, and Microsoft in particular, their stores basically are a one copy of Apple stores. Rather than thinking about what's unique about Microsoft, what could we do that would really express who we are, what we're about, our heritage, and what our mission, what our purpose is in the world, then I think they would have come out with something else that had a much better chance of being successful.
Exactly. I just watched the Bill Gates documentary on Netflix. It was amazing. It was great. They did a fabulous job. Why can't I walk into a Microsoft store and feel Bill Gates? He is interesting. I mean, he's not as interesting as Jobs, but if it's done right, he's still a very interesting guy.
What I always think is the most iconic Apple store is the one on Fifth Avenue, New York. That's the glass cube. If you haven't been there, you've seen pictures of it. And somebody described it to us once as, because the store is actually subterranean. It's under the square, and it's open 24/7, 365. Somebody described it once as it's like walking into the mind of Steve Jobs. What would walking into the mind of Bill Gates be? And how do you instantiate that in a real physical place? What would that experience be?
Let me let you establish a few things before I take you off on too many tangents. I want you to go down the path of, well, first, let me just describe how I feel the experience economy is based on, frankly, going back to the original edition. What I took away from it was like, okay, here's a commodity, here's a service, here's the experience, whatever. But if I could create something for people that is an entirely unique experience they can only get from me, if I can imagine myself being, it's almost like being a Martin Scorsese. I mean, if I want to go see The Irishman, I've got to see Scorsese's Irishman. That's it. There's no other one. If I want to see Tarantino's new Hollywood film, I got to see that. There's no other one. And I think that's what I took away from it. It's like, wow, okay, if I can just imagine myself being there, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I took away from it, what I remembered was that once you hit that, you can kind of, the charging and the pricing changes because people will pay for the experience. They'll pay for the transformation in ways that you as the business owner might not yet even understand how much they're willing to pay for that transformation.
Exactly. What we always say, it's in chapter 3 of the book at the very beginning, is you are what you charge for. You are what you charge for. If you charge for undifferentiated stuff, you're in the commodities business. If you charge for tangible things, you're in the goods business. If you charge for the activities your people perform, you're in the services business. But economically, you're in the experience business if and only if you charge for time, for the time your customers spend with you. And that means an admission fee or a membership fee. You wouldn't imagine going to a Scorsese film or a Tarantino film or any other film for that matter without paying an admission fee to get in because you know it's an experience. Same with a theme park, with a sporting event, with a concert, with a play, and so forth. It was probably the most controversial thing that we said in the book is that in the future, retailers and restaurateurs and many others would charge explicitly for the experience. And that's one of the most gratifying things to see how much more of that has happened over the last 20 years, that still many people, like a Starbucks, gives away the experience to better sell the goods and services, and then they can charge a premium for it. But more and more companies are getting explicit, saying, you value the time, we're going to charge for the time. We're going to align what we charge for with what you value.
Let me let you now establish the kind of basic pyramid, so to speak, the commodities, goods, services to experience. Kind of explain that. Use something like just the basics, starting with the commodity of coffee, just the buying and selling. Map that out, people, so they have a feel for that pyramid.
To introduce the coffee example, back in April, the second week in April, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal on coffee commodity prices. Because coffee obviously is beans. You grow them on the ground, you extract them from the ground, you sell them on the open marketplace. And the headline of the article was that coffee costs less today than it did in April 1999, 20 years earlier. And the significance of that immediately hit for me was April 1999 was when the book came out, right? The official publication date, I believe, was April 5th, 1999. I could have the exact date wrong. That's exactly what it was talked to, and coffee was 99 cents per pound. Back in April, it was 93 cents per pound. Now, in between, what happened to it? It went down, it went up, it went way up to almost $2 a pound at one point, and then it came way back down again, because guess what? That's what happens to commodities. They go up, they go down. You're subject to the vagaries of the marketplace. But you take those commodities, you turn them into a physical good. Now you're like Maxwell House or Folgers or somebody, and you grind and roast those beans and you put them on a grocery store shelf. The beans, if you convert that $1 a pound price, is basically 2 or 3 cents per cup of coffee. What do you get for the physical goods? Well, if you buy it from a store and make it yourself, you're paying 5, 10, 15 cents per cup of coffee. But if you go to some place that brews the coffee for you, whether it's a vending machine, a kiosk, a corner diner, 7-Eleven somewhere, now you're paying 50 cents, $1, and a half per cup of coffee. But surround the brewing of the coffee again with the ambiance and the theater of a Starbucks. And now how much you pay? $3, $4, $5 for a cup of coffee that only has 2 or 3 cents worth of beans in it. And that's where you can see that progression. What often happens as you're going up this is that goods and services are themselves being commoditized. Not true commodities, but they're treated like a commodity where people want to buy it just based off a price. And when that happens, guess what? Your price goes up, your price goes down. You don't have much control of it, but it's not going to go up for long. But that is the case with experiences that you can continue to charge more and more from because people value them much more highly than they do goods and services. In fact, people want goods and services to be commoditized. They want to buy them at the lowest possible price. They want to buy them at the cheapest possible convenience. Why? So they can spend their hard-earned money and their hard-earned time on the experiences that they value.
Let's keep it at Starbucks for a second. We can see that success, a few cents of beans to get the 3, 4, 5, who knows how many dollars, the pumpkin spice, vanilla, right. Who knows what latte. But is that type of business that seems to have embraced the experience aspect of where you're going? Is there a ceiling? Meaning, does now other coffee places say, well, gosh, we need to do something similar to Starbucks and can't be the same. We've got to do our own thing. Or is Starbucks just kind of figured it out and for that particular business, there's not much more you can do with it? Or will they have to keep making the experience become something different because we get tired of the first experience?
Yes and no, and all of that. One, it's a ceiling in the sense that they've raised the bar of people and their expectations of coffee so that now even McDonald's, they can't charge as much as Starbucks, but they charge 2 or 3 times what they used to with their McCafes, where they're actually making drinks for you personally and so forth versus just filling a cup out of a big pot. And other cafes out there are able to do that and approach that. But it's also a floor in the sense of now that they are sort of ubiquitous, now people are used to it. It gives the opportunity for other companies to come in and say, we can do that a lot better. And we can become more cool than Starbucks because they're so ubiquitous. They can't really have the same coolness factor that they did when they were young. Now there's lots of companies that are selling coffee for $8, $10, $12. Blue Bottle, I'm thinking of in San Francisco and others. It's probably less than 5% of the cafe business, but it's absolutely out there. And then Starbucks itself sees that and says, okay, well, we got to do something at the high end. So they've come out their reserve roasteries where you can also spend $10 or $12 per cup of coffee for other things. I've had an experience there with taking a client there where we had a flight of coffee. Taste different beans and from different locales and different roasting methods and so forth and be able to taste the difference from them. And that's a whole experience that costs, it was like $20 or so per person for that. The sky's always the limit. There's always room for innovation. In Starbucks, one of the problems I think they're going to continue to have is one, because they don't charge admission, they're sort of commoditizing themselves, one with their loyalty card, where you can get it's not exactly 11th one free if you buy 10 now with their point system, but basically that's the principle. You buy a number of it, you get one free, which focuses people on the price. Well, you must then you've upped the price of it and not really paying for what I deserve because you're going to give me one free later, and then you got to include the price in that. And it gets them focused on that, which is bad. So is the drive-through where you're not getting the full Starbucks experience. You're not getting there inside where they're shouting out the orders and they're making it where you've got place to spend your time reading, socializing, working, or getting a respite from your day, whatever it might be. And then the mobile ordering, where they're coming in and then they're leaving right away. You got all this confusion going on because of whose cup is that. And they call out a name for the cup and nobody picks it up, and that sounds bad. I think they've got a real problem there where they're starting to commoditize themselves because of all those factors.
Let me add some innovation, as you just threw the word out there, innovation to this thought process of extending the experience. One thing, or I guess it's more than one thing, a combination of two things that have really happened since the launch of the first edition would be the advent of social media and the advent of everybody is now a filmmaker with a phone in their hand. I'll share a story with you and I'll let you kind of run with it. The other day, I was in a 28th floor lobby in Saigon, Vietnam, brand new building, gorgeous, absolutely drop dead gorgeous. I was meeting with a Singaporean friend and it was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I guess this was, quote, high tea, but there was no one really there. It was kind of this new thing that the restaurant's doing. But there were 2 pairs, 2 women, 2 groups of 2 friends, and they each had ordered this high tea, which was a whole set of stuff that sat in the middle of the table, from little cakes to sandwiches to coffee, etc. All 4 of them, they were all dressed up to the nines. They were all taking pictures with the food. They wanted all of that with it. I don't even know if they ate the stuff. As you're talking about Starbucks, I'm thinking, how many people would probably be willing to pay extra now from Starbucks if you give me something that's beautiful that I can take a picture with?
You remind me, I had a friend in the Netherlands who says that when Starbucks first came there, that people would go in, order a cup of coffee, take their picture of it in the place, and then walk out, throw away the coffee, and go down the street. Didn't believe them, and I'm still not sure I know how prevalent it really is. But yeah, it is that sort of thing that people are doing. You have now, people are looking for Instagrammability, places where you can take pictures of things, put it on the internet, show what a great experience you're having, whether it's the Museum of Ice Cream or the Rosé Mansion or the Color Factory, or there's now like a score of these out there that are charging often $25, $30, $40 admission fee to the place that is mostly to take your picture in there. That's how far we've gone.
I think it's amazing too that in Kyoto, Japan, you can go look at these temples. There's people everywhere, but give the Japanese credit. You can almost stand anywhere and get pictures of the temples with nobody in your sight lines except the temple. I don't know how the Japanese did it. It's absolutely amazing. They did this hundreds of years ago, probably when they first set it all up. But it is true. This now, it seems like the experience that everybody wants to be in film. Everyone wants to be a star. Everyone wants to be associated with something memorable. And memorable is a huge part of your work.
One of the fundamental characteristics of experiences is that are memorable. We talked about goods being tangible, services intangible. Well, experiences are memorable. There's a line of memorability between services and experiences. You got to cross that line. You got to just do something that so engages people. It's probably the key word, is that you engage people in the experience you stage in order to create that memory within them. Because experiences also happen inside of us. They're inherently personal, because the experience really is the reaction that we have to the events that are staged outside of us. Becoming memorable is a very key thing when you're staging an experience.
When you first were thinking about that, okay, let's stage the experience, we want something to be memorable, were you thinking at the moment in time, because at that time, not everybody had a camera on their possession. So the definition, the understanding of memorable has changed, because I think we're kind of using our photos and our Instagram, etc., as part of our offline mind.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wrote a blog post last year that made the point that I started seeing more and more that people were using the word memory when they actually meant a photograph. They're saying, capture your memory here. And really they mean take a picture. And I saw it both consumers doing it and companies doing it, which is quite interesting that it's become so intertwined that if you have a great experience, you have to take pictures of it. And there's actually, in the academic literature, there's a debate going on about whether that enhances the experience or detracts from the experience. I always viewed it initially as a distraction, that you don't want people getting at their phone because it takes them out of the experience. Now the experience is being mediated by this tiny little screen instead of being experienced live as a whole person. And I still think largely that's the case in a lot of experiences. You've seen the pictures. There's an article in today's New York Times about the Louvre and the Mona Lisa. You see these pictures of hundreds of people in the room and they're all holding up their cameras. They're not experiencing the actual thing with their eyeballs, unmediated. But then again, there is also research that says that if you are thoughtful about it, that it actually can cement the memories more. It can enhance the experience if you think about how you are framing it, how you are capturing the right thing, rather than just sort of willy-nilly taking pictures. It can be either or, depending on the person, the circumstances, the time, the experience, and so forth.
You and I are both old enough to know that we've got family pictures that were not taken all the time. So there's a few family pictures.
Special.
Right. They're special and they're etched into our mind because there was not that many of them. And those become the definition of our childhood in some ways. But today, I've got teenage nephews, niece. I mean, the pictures are their memories. They're taking so many pictures from a volume perspective. How could those pictures, how could those experiences possibly be memories? There's too many things going on. It's like we're trying to categorize every aspect of our life. It's the Truman Show, okay? We're trying to be the Truman Show.
Very much so. We're the director, however, and the star, not just the star of the Truman Show. Another book, I think from the early 2000s, I don't know if you read, Neil Gabler wrote a very interesting book called Life the Movie. He was making that case before people were all carrying around cameras with them all the time and that people were trying to rearrange their lives as if they're in a movie and they're directing their own movie. And I think that thesis is even more true today than it was then. Now, I was in, since you've been dropping all these place names, right, I got to get one in myself. A month ago, I was in Moscow and I was doing a speech there in the experience economy. Also there on the stage with me was Dr. Daniel Kahneman, right, the Nobel Prize winner. A psychologist, but he won on economics.
A past guest on this show.
Oh, well, super. Right. So then you know him. And they gave me the honor, I think because I was a native English speaker, to interview him on stage, which was quite an honor. It was wonderful. One of his big concepts is the experiencing self and the remembering self. As you're saying, is that people are taking all these pictures so much for that remembering self to be able to look through them, but are they really getting the full impact since there's so many of them that they can only devote a few seconds or even microseconds to, versus the ones that are special that you really spend time and think about, which really maybe take you more back to that experience. You need to design your experiences for the experiencing self, and the remembering self is one of the things that he said. But I wonder, do we ourselves as the experiencer spend enough time thinking about designing how we undergo an experience for our experiencing self as well as for our remembering self?
Let me see if I can get this name right. I've had to use it recently on the podcast with another guest.
Mihai
Csikszentmihalyi. There we go.
I knew what you said. Once you said you got to get it right. That's who it is. Mihai
Csikszentmihalyi. There we go. I think I've got it. I think I beat you.
All right.
Why don't I let you go down the path of outlining his thought process? Because what we're trying to do here, and the reason that if you can get to the experience economy, if you can get to this transformation point as a business owner and what the individual end user is chasing, is we're all chasing this kind of flow state. This is what we want. This is the purpose. Why don't you speak to that and kind of give people a big overview and fill in some blanks there?
Yeah, well, Csikszentmihalyi is a Hungarian psychologist also, and he talks about optimal experiences. And the optimal experiences are those that get you into a state of flow. What flow is where you're balanced between your skills and your challenges. That if your skills are so much higher than your challenges, you get bored. If your skills are so much lower than your challenges, then you get anxious. But if you get that precise balance there where it's just melding together, is when you get in the state of flow, which is where you're so engrossed in an experience that everything else washes away, all sense of time goes away. You could be spending 2, 3, 4 hours at something and think only 30, 40 minutes went by, because you are so engrossed. And those are sort of few and far between, but if you can get people into that state of flow, it is one of the highest value things that you can do. And you can see it all. You obviously can see it in things like video games and that, but surgeons get into state of flow when they're doing surgery, ballet dancers doing ballet. Even I think so, even when I'm writing, there's times when I'm writing and everything's just coming out. You don't want interruptions. You just want to go through that and let it flow out of you in that sense. We relate it to chapter 2 of the book. We have a model called the 4 E's, because basically it's the 4 realms of experience. I won't go into the details of the model, but there are 4 realms of experience, 4 types or genres of experience of entertainment, educational, escapist, and aesthetic. We do think that we always give the advice of the most robust experiences that are those that hits the sweet spot in the middle, that have aspects of all four of these. And that we think is often where you get that state of flow, where I will go in the model of it, where it's both passive and immersive. Well, it's both absorbing what's going on around you and immersing yourself in that environment. That then I think are some of the conditions that can create that flow experience.
And on the other side of the flow experience, to go through it, then you're left with a transformation. That's the point. If you could get people to understand that you're going to deliver, or at least give them the opportunity to possibly get into that flow state, if you can assist them for whatever you're delivering and get them through that, get them into that mix, and then possibly get them on the other side at a transformation, that is a business owner gosh, how can you not do well economically if you can pull that off?
We even talk about that. We're often asked, well, what's after experiences? Well, we use the same heuristic, which what happens when you customize an experience? What happens when you design an experience that's so appropriate for a particular person? Exactly the experience that they need at this moment in time. And that's where you then create a life transforming experience. Exactly what you're talking about. You get through the other end of that flow and you've been transformed in some way. For most people, often it's not one life transforming experience. It's often a series of experiences that you have. But transformations are, in fact, the fifth and final economic offering in this progression of economic value that we highlight in the Experience Economy book, where you are using experiences as the raw material to guide people to change, to help them in particular to achieve their aspirations. There is no more economic value you can provide than to help somebody achieve his aspirations.
By the way, as a little bit of a side tangent, I'm holding the new edition in my hands right now.
Oh, you've got it already. Super.
I'm holding it in my hands. I did notice something, though, from past memory, because when I was looking at the cover, I was thinking, well, I knew it was a different design, but I was thinking, well, there's something else that's different here. And I had to go back, and the subtitle has changed.
Right.
What's the backstory there? So the original subtitle, Work is Theater and Every Business is a Stage, which is still pretty damn cool.
Oh, yeah. And we still have 3 chapters on theater in there. It is basically a recognition that when you are staging an experience, your work is theater, that you're on stage whenever you're in front of customers. We wanted to make that clear and did that. And so it's still in there. But one of the key things we've realized over time, no pun intended, is that time really is the currency of experiences. What people value is the time. The main difference between a service and experience is services are about time well saved, nice, easy, convenient, and experiences are about time well spent, that people value the time that they spend with you. In order to get them to spend that time with you, that's where you have to capture their attention. And all the models we have in there, the 4E model is about having a robust experience that really capture people's attention. The theming model is about having a cohesive experience. The customization is an integral part of the book about creating that personal experience within each person. The dramatic experience that comes with theater, and even a transformative experience that is possible to do with one or more experiences. All of those are based on them, people giving you their attention. And then, of course, money is that recognition of the value that you are creating, that you are what you charge for, that you need to charge for time. And with transformations, we actually say you need to charge for outcomes. That all that matters is whether the customer actually achieves his aspiration. Inputs don't matter, only outcomes. So you ought to be charging for the outcome, where you're providing time well invested. Another thing we talk about in that new preview is that transformations are time well invested. I'm investing my time, and you're helping me do that in a way that's going to pay dividends down the road through this new person I am, through this new transformation. In today's experience economy, basically every company is competing against every other company in the world for the time, attention, and money of individual customers.
As you use the word aspiration, I'm thinking, there's the aspiration that people have that they want. Then there's possibly the aspiration that they don't even know they want yet.
Right. It's the same with goods. Steve Jobs and Apple created goods that you didn't know you wanted. Henry Ford famously said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. But you are able to think on behalf of your customers and come up with things that they can absolutely need. And once they know about it, they absolutely want it, even though it had never occurred to them. That's innovation.
In prepping for this conversation, I started running around the internet and seeing what was being said, and mostly all kinds of good stuff. I think on the Wikipedia page, though, they had some...
I tried to stay off of that.
They had some criticism. I started to read it. I didn't really even understand it. Whatever it was kind of boring me to tears. But But I mean, honestly, because I already had my own preconceived idea of what this is, and I already am on the same page with you. But what is the community or the people out there? Is there really somebody out there that opens up the experience economy, goes through it, and then when they're finished, some high-level academic says, I'm going to spend my life's mission to prove this wrong? Is there really a legitimate criticism that exists?
Boy, I sure hope not. There are some criticisms, some valid, some less so. But
what's the valid criticism from your perspective?
Valid one is that we take the business company view. And that's absolutely true, that we don't take the consumer view. We are talking to business people about this is what you need to do to create greater economic value. We don't spend a lot of time talking about the consumer view of experiences in the book. We do on the stage a lot. We do in conversations like this where we talk about how consumers are experiencing things through their phones and whatnot. We then wrote a book on authenticity, which again, we're still writing to businesses, but we say, but you got to understand authenticity is personally determined because people get to decide for themselves what is authentic to themselves. We think we do a lot of that, but it is valid that we do take a producer view as opposed to the consumer view of what's going on. That's one valid one.
There was an interesting debate recently started by Martin Scorsese, and he was lamenting that indie films, his style of films, perhaps some of the directors that came out of the 70s, a lot of the great ones, obviously, that now they're being replaced by massive corporate superhero films, the Marvel stuff. Scorsese was making a decent case, but then I start thinking about it from the experience perspective, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's big corporate America, and they're delivering something that's putting the fannies in the seats, and it's making billions and billions of dollars. But
giving the people what they want.
I was going to say, they're delivering an experience. It's letting people that want to imagine maybe they're a part of these superhero movies. I mean, it's not my thing. I've seen a few of them, but obviously people like it. So I mean, it's kind of an interesting criticism from Scorsese because I can see his perspective. But then on the flip side, it's like, well, hold on. They're delivering what people want.
Certainly what you don't want to have happen is for them to so deliver what the masses want that they do lose out on the ability to do other things, to lead people into stories that they may not know they want, but they would greatly value if they saw. And that's what Scorsese is doing. I don't think it's a real danger, but people talk about sort of the crowding out effect of superhero movies, that it certainly has crowded out some, but not so much, particularly with the rise of Netflix and Amazon Prime and now Hulu and Disney streaming and Apple streaming and that. There's so much originality going on that have nothing to do with superheroes that I think that it's not a valid worry anymore. But you certainly want to give the Scorseses room to do their thing, tell their stories in a way that will, in fact, wow people who see them.
Interesting thought about the Netflix. I'm a recent subscriber. I just had to check it out and see what's going on. I would have to say that for me, it seems like the vast majority of Netflix content, while it's, quote, new and original, the most interesting aspect seems to be the graphic that advertises what it is, because generally I've clicked through some of these things and a lot of the content, they're spending money on things, they're producing it, but it's going to be interesting to see as people move farther along down the time scale, are they really getting those transformation experiences, or are they just getting kind of filled up for the day? There's a lot of people that are kind of like making things look flashy and dashy, but is it really got heart and soul to it and the authenticity?
Right. Imagine if Netflix's algorithm, hadn't thought about this before, but if Netflix's algorithm took into account what was going on in your life. Your wife was just diagnosed with breast cancer. How does that affect what you ought to be watching? Or if your kids just graduated from college and left the house, even simply you got a new job and you have new responsibilities. Well, how should that affect what I'm watching and so forth? I think eventually that sort of day may come as well, that it's not just about my mood or what I've liked in the past. It's like, what's going on in my life? What's going to be the things that'll help me through this period that I'm in?
Is there something beyond transformation?
I don't think so. We've asked ourselves that question. We've come out to the end of no, because one, you've got this parallel here. It's a commoditization, customization. Experiences can be commoditized because the second time you have an experience, it may not be as good as the first and so forth. But we always say with transformations that the customer is the product, that all that matters is, does the customer get their aspiration again? So the customer is the product, not what you do for that customer, whether they achieve their aspiration. And you cannot commoditize human beings. Human beings are inherently unique. and cannot be commoditized. It's why we always rebel against things like selling body parts and organs and stuff, because they're so wrapped up in the uniqueness of and inherent dignity of every human being. Then we looked at, well, what happens if you customize a transformation? If you design a transformation that's so perfect for somebody, what could you do? And the only thing we could think of would be actually perfecting people that wouldn't just move them to another aspiration. And once you talk about perfecting people, you're no longer talking about the economies of humankind. You're talking about only things that God can do.
Is there another example that you might want to run with that kind of takes a lot of what we've been talking about in this conversation and kind of exemplifies? We've brought up the Apple Store, we've brought up Starbucks, other odds and ends. Is there another one beyond Disney that you really can paint with? I mean, we could go with Disney, it's fine with me, but is there something you'd like to paint with that would really kind of tie everything we've been talking about together?
Well, the other key example I always talk about, and this can differ by cultures, not a single company, but you see what's going on with the progression of economic value, is the birthday party. The core of a birthday party is the experience of bringing out a birthday cake with the candles lit and blowing out the candles and sharing that birthday cake and then opening up presents in that. When you and I were growing up, it was sort of standard for usually our moms to bake a birthday cake, and they bake it from scratch, which means they actually get out the commodities. They touch the flour and the sugar and the cocoa. Actually, I have no idea what goes into a cake. I've never baked one. But they get all that stuff, and it costs only 20, 30, 40 cents at commodities level. But along came manufacturers like Betty Crocker and Duncan Hines, and they created cake mixes and canned frostings, and now we can bake a birthday cake for $2 or $3. But as moms everywhere became more time-starved and parents, they went back to work and so forth, we don't always have the time to do that, that you call up the corner bakery or the grocery store and ask them to perform the service of baking the cake. And that would often cost $10, $20, $30. So you got an order of magnitude from 20, 30 cents to $2 or $3 to $20, $30. And then we stopped even not just baking the cake, we stopped throwing the party. We outsource it, and we go to some place like Chuck E. Cheese's or a McDonald's land or a museum or a Build-A-Bear or any of these innumerable places that will stage the birthday party experience for our kids. Now we're often spending hundreds of dollars on that birthday party experience, another order of magnitude of value. What about the transformation level? Well, in fact, there are companies that actually do things, not necessarily some kids' favorite birthday parties, but do things where kids actually learn things as part of it. Do games around math or history or things like that, where it's not just a matter of enjoying the experience and being entertained, but in fact, educationally learning as well. And that could be part of a transformation. The place where you see that, since you obviously love movies like I love movies, I don't know if you remember, I think it was the 1997 movie with Michael Douglas and Sean Penn called The Game. So basically, Michael Douglas is this billionaire type, made a lot of money on Wall Street, but and I won't ruin the whole story, but he has this particular incident in his childhood that has left him emotionally stunted. And he's not really a full person in that way. His brother, played by Sean Penn, is much more wild and open and that sort of thing, that he wasn't affected in the same way. He gives, for his birthday, he gives his brother, played by Michael Douglas, a card that says, go to this company and this is my birthday present for you. And the company was called CRS, which stood for Consumer Recreation Services, but it was actually a transformation company, because when he got there, they analyzed him, they diagnosed him, they ran him through a treadmill, they saw what his capabilities are, they had a psychologist, did all his Rorschach tests, they figured out what he needed. And Michael Douglas, in the end, sort of said, nah, I don't want to go through it. I said, I don't care what it is. They said, okay. But nonetheless, the game starts. And it plunges him into all these different scenarios. Again, I won't go through them, but at the end of which allows him finally to get over this childhood trauma that he had. And it was a birthday party transformation that literally cost millions, if you think about what it costs to be able to do this. So I do recommend it to you. I did see it. I hadn't seen it in such a long time. I found it on an airplane 3 or 4 years ago. So I watched it again. I would say it still holds up.
I will definitely check it out.
All right.
One last thought. I want to take you back to something. We were mentioning the Apple Store. We talked about the Microsoft Store. We talked about Microsoft essentially just kind of like a bad facsimile, not a copy. That's got to be a little daunting. I'm thinking about that from the business owner's perspective. So here you have Microsoft with unlimited capital. They can do whatever the hell they want to do. They see their competitor do this exciting thing. How does a business avoid, because I would just think that the mistake Microsoft made was they were in Seattle, they were in their own offices, they saw Apple had these stores, and they never really truly understood what Apple was doing. which is an amazing thing to say because, again, they have unlimited capital. So how could they not possibly understand what Apple was doing? But if I'm just looking at their stores, they didn't understand. They didn't get it at all. How can companies start to navigate, big picture wise, making the same mistake that Microsoft made? You might even want to outline some of the mistakes they made. I don't know if they've ever talked about this, how they screwed that up so bad.
Well, like you said, it really was just a copy. They thought the secret was in white walls and wood tables, as opposed to understanding how you interacted with people and the products that you had. Part of it is that they didn't have the same level of engaging products that Apple had. But it does get back again, and this is points that we make in authenticity about understanding your heritage, understand who you are, understand your sense of purpose. What makes you you as a company? What is your purpose in the world beyond making a buck? Everything has to flow from that and has to be a fulfillment of that purpose. So then what is the physical instantiation in retail of who you are as a company that exposes people not just to your products, but to your raison d'etre, to your purpose, to who you are, that exemplifies all that. And that's when I think you can create something. The store that comes to mind, I think it's the best retail format in at least the last 15 years after Apple, probably number 2 in the world versus Apple in terms of just great retail experience, is Eataly. Have you, in your travels, been to an Eataly?
I think I have. I don't know if I've bought anything from them.
One is when I first heard the name, I thought, well, this is an American company. But in fact, no, it actually is an Italian company that named itself Eataly, E-A-T-A-L-Y. And it's everything about Italian food. They have the commodities there that you make food from. They have the goods, the pasta and so forth. They have appliances and that. They have the services, merchandising, all of that, as well as experiences of cafes, of restaurants, and even a transformative cooking school that they charge admission for to turn you into an Italian chef. All comes together wonderfully. You talk about buzz, the amount of people moving in and through that place and sitting down and enjoying themselves as this entire amalgamation of experiences, I think just a wonderful, wonderful thing. That is their purpose, is they've made that physical instantiation of who they are as a company, almost as a country. I think of it as the best tourism possible for Italy as well.
A great topical example of an experience appears to be eating a Popeyes fried chicken sandwich. Apparently, it's not just the chicken sandwich that people are chasing. They are chasing the possible fight, the possible shootout, the possible car wreck, the possible body slam, all of this excitement. And I'm not even joking. Look, it's just a damn chicken sandwich, okay? I've not had one. I can't imagine it's that amazing that all of a sudden all national media has given Popeye all this amazing free publicity. But it must be something to where America's a little bit, I don't know, just it reached America at a boring time, is bored. All of a sudden, all this excitement is going on Popeyes where people are literally getting killed. And then more and more people want to go get the sandwich because that seems exciting.
It's worth killing over. I don't know. Yeah. And well, it's not like Popeyes is a new company. It's been around for decades, right?
Right. How do they all of a sudden create a chicken sandwich experience that you must literally get up out of your chair and run to the Popeyes? Right? It's amazing, huh? It's a really fun topic, though. I appreciate you coming on today and sharing with me. The experience economy competing for customer time, attention, and money. New preface. All kinds of new stuff going on in there. I appreciate you coming on. When's the next book? I know there's going to be another one. There's always another book.
Well, I'm working on a few things, bringing mass customization up, thinking about what that means in today's time, which basically flows from the fact that there are no markets, there are only customers. Therefore, we have to stop marketing and start customering. That's something I'm working on. And then another 5-10 years, I want to start over from scratch on the experience economy. Not even look at the old book, just say, this is what I think about it today. This is what it needs to be. And this is how we talk about it and so forth. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Then I can head off into the sunset. We'll
probably be wearing helmets of some sort with some kind of experience that's completely, maybe by that time, everything we've talked about and written about will be completely go off the rails and we'll be in crazy land or something. I don't know.
I did write a book on that, by the way.
Really?
A number of years ago called Infinite Possibility, Creating Customer Value on the Digital Frontier. So I did address that possibility.
Cool stuff. Hey, where can we send people? Where's the best website? Amazon for the books. Where's the best website?
Yeah, best website, www.strategichorizons.com. Strategic Horizons with an S. That's the name of our company. Jim Gilmore and I and our managing partner, Doug Parker, who does everything else that we don't do as we go gallivanting around the world talking about this.
Joe, thank you for taking the time today. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, Michael. I loved it.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.